Number 10 team, we've been high on them for 2 years straight. It's Josh Heupel and the Rocky Top Volunteers. Yep, that is the Tennessee Vols. Fresh, I don't know about you. I think Tennessee, in my eyes, has almost everything. I know they've lost a bunch on offense, as people would say, but it's kind of weird because they have so many things with them and things that were waiting behind there. It comes down to me 2 areas. The quarterback, Joe Milton, or are we going to see the freshman Nico? And are they going to be able to stop the pass? Where are you seeing the Tennessee Volunteers?
That's a great way to look at a quarterback position. Any team's going to be successful, live or die with the QB. First thing kind of worries me with Milton. He lost the job at Michigan. He arrived there with Heupel, started maybe half a game, and then had his put on the bench for Hendon Hooker. He looked great versus Clemson in the Orange Bowl at the end, but you kind of just don't know what you're going to get. The top two guys, Hyatt and Tillman, are both gone. He's got to continue to build that rapport with the young guys coming up. I think McCoy will be a fantastic receiver and really, step up into that role nicely. And he's actually worked by a lot of the lower guys of that depth chart, so he has more of that rapport. But now the lights are back on you. You can't hide from this one. You've had too many chances. This is your last opportunity. Joe Milton's perspective, you've got to show up. Expectations are extremely high. You beat Alabama last year. Your fans have been talking a lot about being able to beat Georgia eventually and winning the SEC East and winning the SEC and going to the playoff. That all falls on your shoulders of being the leader of that volunteer football team, and you've got to find ways to get the W and go out there and win. And Nico, that's a lot to hand on your shoulders right off the bat. You step in, so if you get thrust in that role, can you even handle it? I think Milton probably, now that had a year and a half, 2 years basically under this Heupel system, had a chance maybe to mature a little bit. I think he's going to be well suited to take over in the role. And this offense really is very quarterback friendly, very receiver friendly. It's 2-3 seconds, balls out, bubble screens, fly routes. There's nothing too complex, but it's very explosive and very lethal as an offense. They were the fifth best passing offense in the country last year, and they were number one in the nation in total yards. So they are going to put points up. They're going to put yards up. Milton just needs to be a little more in himself. He tries to be a little too much the past. Hopefully he's matured. If he hasn't, then Tennessee, I think, is going to be in a hurt early on until Nico gets comfortable. If he's confident going out, I think he'll be okay. You brought up the other point, the defense. When you kind of look at that defense last year, they had some veterans on there. They still struggled getting off the field in big games or in big moments. They gave up, a huge lead. They had a huge lead versus Florida, let Florida come back on them. They got smoked by Carolina. They couldn't get off the field versus Georgia, and they allowed Alabama back in the football game. So their defense got saved by their offense. This year, some of those veterans are all gone. Maybe that's a good thing for Tennessee. Got a lot of new blood in that defense, but they're going to have to be a little more efficient, getting pressure on the quarterback, owning the line of scrimmage. If there's one thing Josh Heupel needs to learn, look at what Alabama and look at what Georgia have done. You need to own the line of scrimmage offensively and defensively. If you can't own the line of scrimmage, you're going to get beat up. You're not going to be able to control the football game. You're not going to be able to control the pace that you want. Sometimes you got to slow it down. Sometimes you got to speed it up. And defensively, you cannot own the line of scrimmage. You're not going to get the pass rush home. Your defensive backs are going to be covering a little bit longer. And with them throwing a lot and when having leads, their offense is going to be, the opponent offense is going to be chucking the ball a lot. And that's how comebacks happen, quick scores. If they can find ways to get past that and really develop and take that jump, I think Tennessee's in a good spot. You look at year one, they only had 7 wins. Last year, they had huge expectations. They found a way to come through and live up to them just almost. Now you're in year 3. What Heupel team are we going to get? Where's this program going to go? You have to go to Tuscaloosa. You get South Carolina and Georgia up in Neyland. This is going to be, I think, a sign of Heupel. Are you being taken seriously, or are you just 2 years and you had an explosive offense and you kind of found luck on your side a little bit in year 2? This is going to be a staple for him in his career. And it's not, can you challenge your defensive players to show up week in and week out and make plays? And can your offense be consistent? Maybe even tweak yourself. Because sometimes I think they throw the ball a little bit too much and they put their defense back on the field, whether they score quickly or there's a 3 and out. You put the defense back on the field, and eventually by the end of the game, they're exhausted. Sometimes you got to slow it down yourself, run the ball even more efficiently. Even though they had a great running game last year, slow it down, run the clock out a bit, change up the pace. Because eventually that defense catches on and they get shut down. You've got to find ways to manage your team collectively and not just one side of the ball compared to the other. I think they're going to be in the mix all the way. Their schedule looks pretty solid down the stretch. You have a nice little start there. You get 2-0 heading in Gainesville. See what happens down there in the swamp. You got UTSA. Another quiet little program can come up in Knoxville, give you a little fight. Frank Harris is a pretty good quarterback. You get revenge for South Carolina. They embarrassed you and ruined your college football playoff chance last year. A&M, at Bama, at Kentucky. and then obviously November 18th you get the Dogs. Um, it's not an impossible schedule. I think the Tuscaloosa trip's going to be a little difficult. If I'm saying it right now, be wary of Texas A&M. They didn't just get all those 5-star recruits the past 2 years and just decide to suck completely. I got a feeling with less expectations, they're going to be a team to be reckoned with. They could come up in Neyland and get you. You've got to be prepared every single week in and week out, whether you're in the Big Ten or the SEC or any conference, really. You've got to find ways to play one game at a time and finish it strong. You can't let these expectations and these bright lights just assume you're going to get victories. If you learn anything from last year, you've got to be tough and you got to play it 1 week at a time. I have the feeling this team is going to have some young hiccups early on, trying to get some young guys in roles. It'll take them a while to get going. They won't be as explosive early on as they have been in the past 2 years. But as the season goes on, they'll catch their wind. They'll get their feet under them. I think the ceiling for them is 11-1. The floor is 9-3. Still going to be a very competitive football team. They will be there in the end, making noise, and they'll make it very difficult for the Georgia Bulldogs in the SEC East. But I think they'll also they'll show some growth and build a more sustainable product even for the future. This year might not be the greatest year for them, but I think it'll be a great balance point for them to really build a sustainable program, not just be a one-year wonder for 2022. Tennessee's in a great spot. Josh Heupel knows what he's doing. They dodged a huge bullet there with all the sanctions coming out under the Pruitt thing. That's going to help them going forward. I think Tennessee's in a good spot. They could make some noise, but this team I think is actually going to be better in 2024 as opposed to 23.
Yeah, Fresh. I'm looking at this, and one of the first things I thought of before we went kind of live here is I've been working on this, and we've had a little bit of time off between records here, and I kept asking myself the question: all right, no one's going to argue 1 and 2 in the SEC for the best coaches between Saban and Smart. Whatever order you want to put them in, that's your choice. But no one's going to argue that those are easily 1 and 2. And the more I thought about this, the more I felt like Josh Heupel is on the edge of taking firm control of the number 3 coach in the entire SEC. I don't think he's in the argument right now. This is going to be the year that he can really cement himself because it's going to show us really how great of a coach he is. While, yes, you lost Tillman, you lost Hyatt in the secondary, you still bring back McCoy, you still bring back Keaton. Both of them are seniors. You went into the transfer portal. You got a 6'5" guy, Thornton, out of Oregon there. He didn't play a ton for Oregon, but he's a huge target there and was highly recruited coming out. You get both your lean rushers and Smart and right back, 1,600 yards between the two of them. There's a lot to like on this offense. There's a lot to like on this offense. The question comes down to which Joe Milton are we going to see? Are we going to see the Joe Milton right after he transferred from Michigan and couldn't hold on to the starting job and Heupel goes to Hendon Hooker? Or are we going to see the Joe Milton we saw in the Orange Bowl last year who just absolutely lit up Clemson and a very good Clemson defense? People want to point out, oh, this player set up, this player set up. Clemson had quality on defense. They're going to have quality on defense this year. And to drop 41 on that team and having a month off to prepare for them, I'm interested because this is going to tell us really how good of a coach and how good Josh Heupel is at developing players. So that's on the offensive side of the football. The question is going to come down to whether or not this team can win is going to come down to the defensive side. They cannot be 126th against the pass again this year. They can't basically say, listen, yeah, you're going to throw for 400 yards, 500 yards on us, and we're going to do the exact same to you. We can't win every single game in a shootout. They have to be better defensively. They're fairly good against the run, but they got to improve that pass defense. It scares me a little bit that they're returning a lot of those starters in the secondary. Are those starters going to make that jump? Are they going to get that much better the next year? Because I don't think Heupel's got, while he has the offensive skill players waiting in the wing, like you talked about, the guys that have been working with Milton, I don't think that's true in the secondary. I don't think that's true on the defense. They're going to really have to put a lot of their money into that development of the players over the summer. I hope they've done that. I hope it's going to wind up paying off. Are they going to put these kids in the position to win? I'm with you on the schedule, man. They should be 5-0 going into their bye week October 7th. Again, we think, Florida, neither one of us think very highly of the Gators this year. That UTSA game in Neyland is a trap game. I think coming out of the swamp and then going, like we said, going against Harris, that's a game where if you do not take the Roadrunner seriously, they could come into Knoxville and upset you. I think that Tennessee is really going to be aiming and have a target marked on the Gamecocks there in week 5. Then it really comes down to it. I like that Texas A&M is coming in. I got them at 6-0, and you're going to get the trash kicked out of you by Alabama. You're going to go down to Alabama. You're going to try to do it. Saban's out for revenge in that game. Like, Saban is legitimately out for revenge. I think that game's going to get ugly very, very quickly. That is the loss right there. Everything in their season from here on out is going to come down to November 18th. Tennessee. We have been a little more me than Fresh here, but Fresh hasn't been critical of Tennessee, as respectful as he can be as a Georgia fan there. But we've been high on you. And it's going to come down. You could take that loss versus the Crimson Tide, but if you're 9-1 going into the Georgia game, that game is for the SEC East. I don't see Georgia tripping up at all going into that game. There's a couple of things that we can argue about and say, hey, maybe this game, maybe that game. I don't see Georgia tripping up until I see them undefeated going into November 18th. That means that game becomes the tiebreaker. Even with a loss to Alabama, Tennessee could win. If they win that game, they're going to Atlanta. That's the measuring point. Last year, you beat Alabama. Folks, it's very hard, very, very difficult to beat Alabama year in, year out. It just doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. I don't know of a program that does it. If you want to take the next step, Tennessee, the next step is you have to beat Georgia. You don't have to win the SEC. Let's say you get tripped up by Kentucky or South Carolina. But if you can beat Georgia on November 18th, this is a huge season for you. And all of a sudden, I don't care if you're playing in the Tax Slayer Bowl there, beating Georgia and having that feather in your cap and knowing what's coming down the pipe in 24 and 25, again, when you move away from the division thing, I think that this could be a huge thing for Tennessee. Again, if Tennessee loses to Georgia and you go 10-2, no one's going to fault you. But everyone's going to say you're just not there yet. So, Tennessee, are we looking at 24 for you? Or is 23 going to be the year we say, okay, Tennessee is officially back, and it all comes down to November 18th versus the Georgia Bulldogs?
I like how you mentioned, this is the last year of the divisions with Texas and Oklahoma arriving next year. Some of these little rivalries and these little, measuring sticks are going to become few and far between going forward. So this might be your last shot if you're the Vol. Even though next year in 24 they do play, each other, but you might get limited more opportunities to get these kind of measuring sticks, these kind of wins. So, those chances are slim and few and far between coming in the next 5 to 6, 7 years. You got to take advantage of when the opportunity is there.
Fresh, I got this team. I'm exactly with you. I got 11-1. I'm going to say I don't see them having a snowball chance in hell to beat Alabama going into Tuscaloosa. I think Nick Saban's just ready for it's one of those games that Saban's going to circle. Who knows? And the best thing is going to be whether or not they beat Georgia. I think that if you told me to place a bet on this, I got them in at 10-2. Like, I would be fairly strong at 10-2. 9-3 is also my floor with Tennessee.
Sounds like a deal.